Greetings, brothers and sisters. Today I would like to talk about privacy. I remember a friend of mine, my best friend, and brother, I hope you'll watch this or will do so one day, said something to the effect that we respect the rights of people to keep their privacy, or something to that effect. I'm not sure what organization, brother, you were thinking of, because that was not the one I was in. Directly and indirectly, the organization violates people's privacy. And today I would like to talk about it. Everybody has a right to privacy. Everybody, in fact, that's in the forefront of people's minds nowadays. Be it governmental agencies intruding into a person's records, or a company collecting data on people, or how our healthcare agencies handle our medical records. Privacy is really ingrained in the conscience of people today. Privacy and freedom go hand in hand. And where there's a lack of one, there is a lack of the other, obviously. Everyone has a right to keep their secrets, to keep their embarrassing stuff, to themselves, that, it's no one else's business. Everybody has a right to reveal certain details when they choose to reveal them, and to the audience and to the people they choose to reveal them to. It's no one else's right. So I would like to talk today how the rights of people are violated. I'll start off talking about how directly privacy is violated. Let's see. Why are records kept on judicial committees, and what people have done in the past? In fact, ARP 7601 and Christ Only has a really good video on this called Dirt in a Jar. And that's really emblematic of what is taking place. People's dirt gets put in a jar and gets filed away on a shelf. Why is that? Anytime there's a record kept on someone, there's always a chance that that record could be accidentally fall into the wrong hands. If the scripture in Psalm says God puts our transgressions as far as from the sunrise to the sunset, so He puts our transgressions away. If this were truly God's organization, would they not do the same? However, they do not do that. They keep a record even after matters are forgiven. They're never forgotten. And of course, what a person has done gets recorded, and sometimes oftentimes sent to headquarters and put in a drawer somewhere for years. It's what a person does, they make a mistake, it can follow them for years, even after they put that mistake way behind them. And why should that ever be? It really, of course, I want to clarify something that, to start off with, once I asked, brother, I asked you, we were just chatting, I'm like, why do the elders keep records on people? And you said, well, they want to make sure a person's not a child molester. Which is kind of ironic when you really dig in and see how elders do handle predators in their midst, and how many times, it's organization policy not to inform parents that there is a predator and they need to watch their children around, and there are lots of lawsuits because of that. But that's neither here nor there, and everything I'm saying today is not crimes, it's not acts of predation on another individual. I'm talking about mistakes that fall outside those bounds. Everybody makes mistakes, sometimes seriously so. And people have a right to keep that to themselves. People have a right to overcome them and, move on with their life. Why are these records kept? And of course, well, to illustrate how this can really, anytime there's a physical documentation on someone, what can happen is, when I was a ministerial servant a number of years ago, we had several congregations meeting in the same hall, and when I came in early, the previous congregation had just filed out. I came in, I was setting up the sound equipment and preparing for the meeting, and well, I saw a folder in a seat, and so I took the folder, wondering who it belonged to, if I should put it lost and found, and I flipped it open, and immediately I saw a person's name I recognized, and they confessed to such and such. I shut the folder. And in the peripheral of my vision, I'd seen a whole list of names, and I recognized enough that it was what they had did in judicial committees that had, and how matters had been handled, and whatever I did see, I willed from my mind. It's an amazing feat that I was able to do that. But I really did not want to know that stuff. I know how I would have felt if my name had been in that folder, and people looked up and saw mistakes I may have made. And so knowing how I would have felt, to me that was just egregious. And of course, a few minutes later, I took that folder and I put it in the sound booth so I could, it was out of reach. And a few minutes later, the presiding overseer of the previous congregation came in huffing and puffing, and he ran over to the seat. And of course, that folder wasn't there, and he was starting to panic. And I gave him the folder, and he thanked me profusely. And it just goes to show what can happen when your mistakes are written down like that. And anytime there's a record, well, that record could potentially fall into the wrong hands. I personally, know how I felt, but imagine if there had been another person who felt differently, who didn't mind violating people's privacy and reading all the juicy details and and having little tidbits of knowledge. There are people like that. And because also, well, let's just say if you move to another congregation, your records move with you, and that mistake moves with you. And you go to another congregation, that mistake could follow you for years to come. And though the records might not be public knowledge, elders have access to those files. And sometimes, some elders are indiscreet on things, and everyone can, people can know what you've done, and it's really embarrassing. It's a lack of privacy. Let's see. I don't know if I beat this topic to death or not, but that's one way, privacy is violated. The next is, in general, how, disfellowshippings and judicial committees, and of course the announcements made from the platform, so-and-so is reproved, or, is disfellowship. And then oftentimes, of course, that in itself, can really hurt a person. However, maybe a few weeks later, a local needs talk comes on a certain serious matter, and it might be about what that person did. And that person's name is not mentioned, but in a congregation of about 100, 2 and 2 can be added together, and people compare a talk with the last big announcement that happened. And goodness knows, if somebody's name was announced as reproved, and a few weeks later, a talk, a local needs talk happened on what someone else did, and people pair that talk with that announcement, and people can come to the wrong conclusion. Almost that's even worse in certain ways. But that does happen, and there's really little way a person can rectify the matter. I know I've experienced this myself. It's a person can be ground into the dirt, kicked when they're down, easy. And then there is the investigative committee. Now, years back, elders played private detective. They follow people suspected of wrongdoing of one nature or violating Watchtower rules of various natures. And, people staked people out and followed them, and, it's outside their house. And of course, I've had relatives that were elders that actually engaged into this, and the Watchtower finally came back and said to stop policing the flock. However, of course, some elders do still evidently take it upon themselves to investigate, sometimes like that. And of course, even officially, there are investigative committees. And even if, a person's friends, their family, can be called into the back room and questioned about a person. And, maybe the elder is discreet enough, the two elders are discreet enough to question them in such a way not to reveal what that person is suspected of doing. However, sometimes you can tell, as roundabout as the questions may be, well, people can put two and two together. Or even, of course, some elders, are just not discreet whatsoever, and they blurt things out that, even under Watchtower rules, they weren't supposed to. And they might point blank ask things that reveal, that violate that person's privacy, even if they're innocent. In quantum mechanics, the mere act of measuring a system changes the system. The waveform collapses, and and therefore the mere act of questioning collapses the system. It changes things. So even if a person doesn't know the details of what the person is suspected of doing, the mere fact that they were pulled into a back room and questioned, that can, that's a violation of privacy. And of course, I've been subjected to that several times myself, and I did not like that. And I've been, of course, I've also been pulled in, as an investigation about other people as well. But, I won't go there today because that's sort of very emotional. Well, let me think. Well, I've not made a all, inclusive list here. But these are just some of the ways privacy is violated. And, elders are supposed to be discreet and supposed not to talk about these things. And, of course, counsel is given not to gossip. And, that's, with human nature being what it is, if you get a secret, if you're an elder, I've never been an elder, but, hearing experiences of elders, you handle a judicial committee, and that stuff weighs upon you, rots in you, burns you in there, and you have nobody to talk to about it. And sometimes elders let things slip, tell people they trust in their circle. And of course, human nature being what it is, the person they trust, they have the same problem now. The secret is burning in them. They have to tell somebody. And, this stuff has a way of leaking out. It's almost like quantum mechanics again. It's sort of like quantum tunneling. That secret just gets out of any barrier. It's impossible for, it's just, so, many elders are discreet. So some are unfortunately not. Some elders have let things slip to their wives, and those, if you want to know what's going on in the congregation, go out in midweek service, get chummy with the pioneers and the elders' wives, and sometimes you might well know, the pulse of the congregation and what is going on. If you're stuck in a car with someone all day, you run out of things to say. You're grasping at straws, and anything that juicy comes along, you're counseled against gossip, but, well, it does happen. And, we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of gossip as well. But that's just shows how these things can spread from something that's confidential and just, leap past any barrier. There's no guarantee that something will remain secret. They can't guarantee it. It can leak out because the way the structure is built. That there are, that you're guilted, and if you have something to confess, you're made to feel that if you don't confess, you're going to be destroyed in Armageddon, and thus you better confess to the elders, and so you do so. And of course, that does, that's where the trouble begins. Or maybe there's a whole culture of informing, and thus your privacy is violated. You do something that's, other, people in the greater community might shrug at, but it's a violation of Watchtower rules. Oh, they went to the YMCA, or they walked out of a rated R movie, and suddenly, there's a culture of informing, and there's judgmentalism. There's so many little teeny rules that a person can violate and is measured against. That just, it's a breeding ground for these sort of things. It bothered me greatly for years. When I started to think about how judgmental of a community Jehovah's Witnesses are, of course there are many good-natured, many, do their best. But unfortunately, these things do transpire, and it's just part of the melting pot, that the brew that, it's the chemistry is just right to violate people's privacy. Let's see. And of course, outsiders, people on the outside of the organization, are not immune to violations of privacy. For instance, what would happen if the public knew that every time they took a magazine from a witness who came to their door, that person's name was written down, their address, details about their house, their yard, do they have toys, they must have children, are they married, divorced, what did they talk about, what article was highlighted, and so forth. People would be aghast. And, people might even feel violated that how not at home records are kept as well. If they knew that, they might really be uncomfortable that a stranger is writing down that they were not at home. Of course, even though these are personal records, this is encouraged from the top down to do so. And of course, the public probably doesn't realize that when they have a conversation with a witness, it doesn't necessarily stay between them and the witness, that oftentimes, that person goes straight to the car group, and everything that they talked about is regurgitated. And sometimes it's to troubleshoot how to reach this person better, or how to answer this person's question. and how can we draw them to the truth, and so forth. Of course, people might feel violated if they knew what they had talked about in confidence to that person goes to that car group or to that person's pioneer partner, or brothers and sisters, at the meeting, do you have any experiences? And people raised their hands, said, I talked to such and such individual, and they said this and this, and we talked about this, and so forth. And sometimes, meeting parts, there might be meeting parts of experiences, or these experiences given at assemblies about at field service experiences. And sometimes if a person is converting, if they're studying, that's Bible study, might not know that they've been talked about all along to, everything that was said during the Bible study process may have been related in a comment or an assembly experience. And, sometimes people, know the Bible study very well by the comments given, and by the troubleshooting that is performed. It's, of course, so it's, directly and indirectly, people's privacy is violated. And, of course, the reason is that, it is a top-down organization. The concept is that God, filters his commands through the organization from the top down. And the individual has no right. Democracy is viewed as wrong. And a person has no rights. A person's rights are greatly diminished. For a person doesn't really matter. The organization, the whole, is what matters, not the individual. And in that sort of mindset, these things can transpire this way, and people can be chewed up and spit out really easily. Well, I've rambled on long enough. I hope everyone has a good weekend. Live long and prosper, everyone.